Well, thank you, sir. And thank you to Maxon, Matthias for everything they do and bring all these artists out here, and for bringing 3 of us from Greyscalegorilla here to talk to you not only about R20, which is just released, but also to show you a little bit of what we do at Greyscalegorilla, which is we all love learning. I think there's a misunderstanding that at a certain level of any career, you just kind of become an expert and you stop learning and you just do your work. And that is, at least for me, I've never found that door or window to crawl through. It's constant learning, and it's, in our case, constant teaching. And that's what we love to do here at Greyscalegorilla. And we love it so much that we started doing, a few years ago, a show called AskGSG. Anybody seen AskGSG? Awesome. So what we do is we answer your questions about Cinema 4D, about your workflow, and try to solve it real time on Twitch and try to answer your questions. And what I love about it is that we are able to show you the creative process. And just like I said before, when you're asked by a client to do something creative, it's often never been done before, not in the way that you want it done or the client wants it done. And it's that creative process that I love going through. And I love going through it live and showing you that sometimes you hit a dead end, and sometimes you use the wrong plugin, you got to go back and try something else. Anybody ever run into those problems? Well, we do too, all the time, and that's what AskGSG is all about. So think about a question that you have. We have R20 here on the computer, ready to show you if you have a specific question about the new version of R20. Please ask us. We're here to show you, and if you have a question on how things combine, we're basically going to open this up and play an experiment, just like we would with the client, right in front of you, and try to problem solve.
We're here for you.
We're here for you. I'm going to learn just as much as well, because
I think we all will.
Yeah, Chad.
Mostly from this guy.
Chad and Chris have been playing with R20 for many more hours than I have as well. So it'll be a learning process for me to watch them experiment and play. So if you're not familiar with Greyscalegorilla, my name is Nick Campbell. This is Chad Ashley, and this is Chris Schmidt. Please give it up for these guys right here. Also a little bit for me too. Thank you. I have an ego. Thank you. All right. So let's get started with R20 and some questions. So think about a question that you've had. If you've seen so many great presentations here at Siggraph. You've seen all the new versions or all the new features in the new version of R20. And maybe you have a way that we can try to combine this. It's turning into like an improv thing. But yes.
I love this.
Yes. Okay, so the question is, with the VDB and the meshing and the volumes, is there any other ways to smooth this stuff out better? Are there other tools to help refine things? And I don't know, Chris, you've been playing with, and also Chad, you've been playing with the volumes.
Right.
What are some maybe we can approach it this way. What are some techniques to really smooth those things out and get rid of those little edges that we show up with right away?
Well, the good thing about the VDB meshing is that the meshes are actually pretty clean. And so a lot of times, renderers like Redshift, Arnold, Octane, they have that render time smoothing for doing like subdivision surfaces. I can't remember. Oh, he's back there. Okay. And so a lot of times you can do some pretty low res VDB mesh and use that to smooth it out. Now, your question was more about the hard edge type stuff. Now, there's not so much you can do there. Some of the renders do have render time round corners, but in this case, it's not really a good thing to use because these are mostly organic shapes anyway. You're almost better off just finding a smoothing level that works, and Chris can walk you through some of the smoothing level tricks that I think could benefit you.
With the volumes, let's just do something really simple. Like we're going to make a cube here, and let's go ahead and convert that into a volume with the builder. And to demonstrate the problem you're talking about, if we now feed this into a mesher, then we now get some geometry. It's really clean. And now one of the great things right away about the mesher is it's always quads. There's no triangles.
Quads.
Yeah, so right there, all the smoothing, the usual smoothing processes are going to work really well because something like a subdivision surface doesn't like triangles as much. You get some weird points. Now, along those lines, you see immediately, based on the current voxel resolution, that it's kind of rounded this out, and the best way to continue increasing it is by dropping the voxel size. So if I drop this down to 2, we get very sharp edges now. We could even drop it down to 1, and we're going to get incredibly sharp edges, but we've created a lot of geometry in the process. Now, there is one setting right out of the gate, if you want to keep these sharp edges, and depending on the way your mesh is in the mesher, we have the adaptive, and as we drag this up, it's going to remove a bunch of the geometry that's unnecessary. So even by taking that up just a little bit, you see everything is dropped way down, but the corners where the detail is needed is maintained. So that goes a long way to dropping this down. So now this isn't a very organic mesh, so this slider's not, it's kind of like it's there or it's not, but immediately you see they got rid of tons of the density, so that that immediately kind of is the main solution to it.
Yeah, in fact, you can take something like this, now that Chris has sort of like decimated the mesh a bit, but it still maintains a lot of those quads. We can open something like, this doesn't have to be Arnold, but I know it's installed in here, so I'm going to go ahead and throw the Arnold tag on here. And we'll go into the subdivision tab and tell it to use a Campbell-Clark subdivision of 2 iterations. Now what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to do that subdivision and rounding at the render time, which is going to offload that. So if we bring up an RPR window here, and I'm just going to throw in a generic light so we can see what we're doing. Let's just grab a skylight, sky dome. And I'm not sure if we have a HDRI link on here. Looks like we don't. So we'll go ahead and use a different light. We're going to grab a area light, which is my second favorite light next to a HDR ink dome light. And let's move this off so we can actually see what we're doing. All right, let's tilt it up a little bit. All right, so now what we're seeing is we're seeing a really nice rounded bevel. And that's happening at render time. You can see it's perfectly straight in the viewport, and we've got a really nice rounding here in the render. That's going to happen any program that has that render time subdivision. So that's a really great way of handling what you were describing. Sometimes you will run into organic shapes that probably won't work out that well, but for the most part, yeah, it's very handy.
Yeah, but as soon as you're making an organic shape, you can go and do things like throw in the smoothing, which we can actually do here pretty easily. I'm going to go ahead and crank this back up again all the way. And if we were, and we can go and chill out our voxel size by increasing it up to something like 4. But as we add in something into the builder, like a smoothing, if you're doing organic things, you can create a smoother. It's still entirely creating quads, but now we can smooth out the overall edges. So, you know, making hard edges, you need lots of sharp geometry. But if you're doing smooth ones, you have lots of options as far as smoothing that out. And I'm also a big fan of doing whatever shape you need to. Let's just, for fun, throw in another shape here. Make a cylinder, drag it up here, and we'll drop it in, as easy as that, and those are going to blend in. Now, in addition to using the smoother, make sure your order of operations is correct here, so we want smoothing to be at the top to affect everything. You see that is going to transition those really nicely. But you can also keep in mind that we can sharpen that up a little bit and always go and use the smoothing deformer, which is great. Let's hit Alt-G, group that up.
That's cool.
And put this in there. And then the smoother will work really well on top of that, even
what's the order? What's the order you put that in? Because I've seen you use that in other objects. Do you put it in the hierarchy, or do you just put it at the bottom like that?
Well, I'm pretty sure we can make it a child of the mesher here. Yeah, you see that? That will also work. I didn't actually need the null. So essentially, it's looking at this as geometry, and then this is now deforming the final result of the volume mesher.
So that's another level of smoothing, but it's happening at the geo level, not at the VDB level.
Exactly. So that's just a fun one to. I've been doing that constantly when I'm working with volume stuff. Let's just get that final little bit of smoothing to get. If you have a relatively low poly count, then it's going to start looking a little bit sharper. You get some jagged edges. Now you can throw it into a subdivision surface, but even better would be, let's just smooth it out that little bit extra, and now you don't need to subdivide more.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Another question. Anything else in R20 that we can play with, or any questions we can solve? Because I also have questions. I know it's AskGSG. We usually have the audience ask, but I could also ask some questions here. Yes, sir. So he heard that R20 could do single point bevels on type. So is that like a chiseled type kind of situation? Yeah. So
okay.
Chiseled type.
That is a cool demo.
It is a very cool demo. Thank you. So Chris, you want to walk through this one?
Yeah, the original demo of this was shown to us from Rick Barrett from Maxon.
Thanks, Rick.
And there's two different variations of it. So there's one way that he did it and a different way I had been tinkering with. I'm more familiar with the one I tinkered with, but let me just show you that really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and create an extrude, and let's go ahead and create a text spline. And we're doing this so that we have the, we could have used Motex, but now we get access to the spline as well. It's always more fun to see a nice big chunky text. I don't know what's on this machine, so let's just click on that one. Good enough for me. And it's already pretty bold. And let's center it. And let's go ahead and extrude that to be a little bit deeper. Cool. So we've got that going. So now let's go ahead and create ourselves a volume. All right, let's build a builder. I keep clicking.
Okay, I got to stop you there because I've seen text on the screen It's too many times.
Oh, what do you
And
want
there's
to type?
too many cool names out here. Anybody have a good name we could type in here? Yeah. What do we got right here? Yeah, you got something.
There's one
First
in the back
word you
there.
say.
You're right.
I don't know is fine. That's good.
wait.
How about
We had one back there.
what we got? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm gonna come closer and hear it.
I couldn't hear what.
Luca. Luca.
L-
Thanks, Luca. That's a good name.
Yeah, there you go.
It's also one of my favorite types of 3D noise. Okay, so we've got a word in here, and we can go ahead and we want to increase the resolution probably in the builder a little bit. So let's drop that down to maybe something like 5, and let's go ahead and throw that into a mesher. And now we've got our text, and it's even blobbing together a little bit, which is really cool, just for fun. We're going to go ahead and grab our horizontal spacing, and you can see we can just melt it into each other and pull them apart. So I've been saying it's like a bool object, and the metaball had a baby, and it was awesome. So we can keep on increasing this resolution to make this sharper and sharper. So I jump that up, and then I'd probably want to do something like maybe create a smoothing layer just to smooth out those edges a little bit, because it's really nice there now. But now what's cool is we can go ahead and throw in a spline. I mean, just for fun, why don't we throw in something like a circle spline? And if I throw that in as well, you see it automatically becomes a mesh. So instead of using a circle, why don't we go ahead and feed in the exact same text that we're using to create the rest of this? So I'm going to drop it in. We'll start by dropping it above, and you see the text is right on the front. You can see we kind of got a series of spheres sampling on the front, but let's go ahead and increase the sampling of that. So I'm going to do a density of 0.5. I found it just becomes really smooth. So now we can do something like, right now it's a union, so it's blending that mesh in. So these are perfectly blending in, and we could put the smoothing above it, and it's going to blend it even better. But instead of doing a union, why don't we go ahead
where he's going.
and
Here it
do a
comes.
subtract? So now we're getting a subtraction from there. Now we're getting pretty cool looking text. I have no idea how we would have made that beforehand. But to get more specific to what you were just asking, I can turn off the smoothing for a second. We can grab this text and keep on increasing our radius. In fact, just so we can see what we're doing, we can keep on increasing this radius. And you see it's going to blob out and just kind of merge into itself. But if we push that far enough, then we won't get these gaps in the middle. So let's go ahead and grab that and increase this gap even more.
So you're just trying to get rid of the gaps?
Yeah,
Is that
so
what
the
you're trying
gap
to
is
do?
gone. And now when that is getting subtracted, you see that we've completely pulled this off to these sharper points here. And if we were to grab this and just, you can interactively see me change this. So you get a nice little tiny one. So you get like that nice little bevel. But if you keep pushing it, eventually they intersect entirely. And all we see is like that final smoothed out mesh on the front. Go ahead and increase the resolution on that again. And we're going to get these super crazy awesome bevels on that.
I've also seen it. It's almost like type dependent too. Certain typefaces will be more evenly spaced and give you a better look for this.
That's
Right.
actually by doing an entirely different technique, which is more of what Rick had originally shown. And I'm going to see if I can remember how he did it. I haven't actually tried to demo that. And also, you can go to Cineversity and check out his video to do it
Yeah, he has a
specifically.
great video on that.
But I think what he did, and I'm totally doing this on the fly, so let's find out if this works. I'm going to create a plane effector. We're going to make that a child of the, I don't know if it was on the mesher. Let's try it on the mesher. I'm not entirely sure that's the right spot. We're going to put that on the mesher. And now in the fall off, we're going to go ahead. Oh, Rick can correct me when I do it wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and, okay, so the plane effector is going to affect the final geometry here. What is it doing? I want to affect the points, and now you can see that it's exploding off in all directions.
Perfect. Done. Save it. Let's go.
We're done. We're out.
So do we do that in transform space? I think it's going to be the mode here. So do we set that to absolute? Nope. Do we do remap? Oh, Z. Okay, even better. So we just, let's type in Z. 100s might be too big. Let's even chill that out a little. Let's say 25. Okay, cool. So that's kind of blowing that out in all directions. But now we can go into our fall off, and we're going to feed that same text spline in here. So now we are falling off where it's pushing forward or backward based on this spline. So the spline is fed in, and we can go ahead and tell this to not be along, but be based on a radius. So now it's a radius traveling around, traveling around the spine in a similar way. It's kind of like we just have a plane effector with a spline-shaped fall off, but it's a circle traveling around it. So now that we've got that, we are going to, do we mask? Oh, yes. I'm so glad he's here. So we're going to change this to mask
So literally,
mode.
the Rick we're talking about
Is
that
right off screen.
That showed us this in the first time is right here off screen. feeding us. We need like an earpiece next time, Rick, so you
Yeah.
could whisper it, so it's a professional.
Yeah.
So now it's a mask.
This
which
is
means,
awesome.
It's like the spline is being projected from a particular orientation, and the orientation is correct. It's along Z, but right now the mask is falling off on the outside, and I think we want it to fall off on the inside. So there we go. Just by
Hello.
doing that, we are
There.
getting this like flattened version of that text. And I think if we go and we play with
You
our
could change the curve on it, I think. and
yeah, right
get
here
a
we got our
different-
radius. So now we can start increasing that radius. I guess it actually is a somewhat similar result. But this is a cleaner, sharper edge. Like
Yeah.
that looks so sharp.
Yeah, I like the A looks better on this one.
Yeah, that one looks great. So
Although that font's not really built for that.
I'm not
but-
a font guy. You want to change the font?
No,
Chad?
that font's great. That font's great.
But yeah, well, and even that, it's like it's so crazy the things that we're going to be able to layer and layer and layer up on top of this. If we were to turn off that plane effector, we can go ahead and feed in the text multiple times, and it's just so cool that we got that. Okay, cool. Subtract that. But now let's go ahead and just make an instance of that text so I can move it around. I'm going to go ahead and pull that back a little bit further, or even just leave it there right there. Let's go ahead and drop that into the volume builder, and I'm going to tell that spline also to, let's say, subtract, and let's have it be a better resolution. That looks cool, though. Let's go ahead and crank that up.
It's
and we're
like
gonna
what
shake
my
this up.
apple looks like when I get done eating all of it.
Yeah, like tiny little bites. But now you can see I've got a second layer, and I can push this in and get that cool bevel on that edge. We could duplicate that a second time and push it even. I'm not gonna smooth this one out. We can pull this one back and merge it or blend it and subtract it. So we're just combining all of these things, and it just gets, oh man, it gets so insane with the things you can start layering up and making insane. And the fact that's still parametric.
Yeah, I mean,
we can go
we
ahead
still
and-
can change the
Yeah,
font, right?
we can go ahead and add a couple of exclamation marks
There we go.
and it's all
2
live
exclamation points.
so you want to pick a nice font there, Chad?
Yes.
Yeah, let me find a font here that works. I was thinking actually this font would work if it was just all caps. But
Use this one.
oh, is this one?
So part of AskGSG is experimenting and playing with some of the new technology, but the other part of what we do at Greyscalegorilla is always try to take it as far as we can as far as the final render. So a lot of that comes down to the design of it, the camera angle, the lighting, the textures, and so let's have Chad come in here and kind of art direct our scene a little bit.
Yes,
and
please.
see what we could do with this bevel type.
We're gonna make this into an epic movie title, Luca.
Epic
I
movie
hope
title.
He's not even watching anymore. That's cool.
Luca 2 coming soon.
All right, so first thing I'm going to do, let's make it really cinematic. So I'm going to try to find the key that I'm looking for. There it is. Let's make sure that we've got our HUD display, and we're going to go letterbox on this baby, and we're going to make it a really nice. Let's just do like a really nice Panavision. There we go. This is going to be the movie title.
Widescreen makes everything
I know. Look at
extra
that.
epic.
Look at that. Just the epic movie title right there. All right. So what should we do? What kind of text do you want? You want like Chromey thing? Let's do Chrome. Well, we can do it all in the viewport then.
Yeah, Chrome
So
will look
let's
good.
let's just grab a material here. I'm just going to double click, throw that right onto our volume mesher, and let's just jump right into the settings here. And I'm going to grab. Let's see. We're going to go into reflectance and let's get rid of Mr. Specular. We're going to add a GGX. It's already looking chromed out. Let's grab the little bit of roughness going on there. I feel like gold is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Gold.
Definitely.
Luca, what do you think about gold? Good. Okay,
Yeah?
he's in.
All right, so let's just grab our layer for now, and we're going to pick conductor, and I'm going to pick the preset of gold. And there we have that. Now let's go ahead and also just, I feel like I'm just going to do this on the fly here. We're just going to do this really quick. Grab a plane, throw it back there. Let's toss it into the background a little bit. And we're going to just quickly rough out a little gradient back there. This is a little trick that I like to do, and I'm just sort of figuring out what I want things to look like. So we're going to go to filter, get rid of grid, get
Yes,
rid
thank you.
of
That was driving me nuts.
world axis, get rid of horizon. Okay, so now basically when I unclick anything, I'm just looking at your name, which is what I want. All right, so let's dump a material on there. Let's grab, I'm going super fast. This is going to be good. All right, luminance, yes. All right, ramp.
That's good. It's good.
All right.
Good energy, Chav.
Gradient, there we go. Okay,
Here we go.
so this is what I'm after here. I'm going to create this nice, these
you can show
gradient
off the new
tools.
gradient.
Oh, the gradient tools,
Do
I
it.
forgot. All right, so the gradient tools are so amazing now. So yeah, you can do, I mean, they obviously look a lot different. They're a lot easier to click. Here's another great thing. You can actually select, you can actually come in here, and I believe, if I do this right, what is the command now? Oh my God, I'm forgetting. Oh, you can grab these like center control points and move them around. You can also quantize your position on these just by holding, I believe, Shift. So if you hold down Shift, you can quantize your gradient right here. I believe it's in increments of 5, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, I believe we could actually see that happening if we did that. So yeah, I believe, 5. So we're going an increment of 5 here, which is awesome. Another thing that you can do in these gradients, I mean, this is going to be a little bit weird, but let's just go ahead and load, actually, you know what? Let's just load a color. So I'm going to go to the color, and let's see, what do I want to do? Let's go grab this, and let's go to the palette. So a really interesting thing that I saw somebody do that I was like, oh my gosh, you can actually have a palette of colors and just drag it up into the ramp, and it just makes a ramp for you like that.
That's
which is really, really awesome. Now, you notice that they're all selected. So I now have bounding box selections for all of my knots on my gradient. That is super, super rad. I was hoping I get a chance to show this. Now, it's not cinematic at all right now. It's like kind of wacky. So let's just bring it back to where it was. So we're going to right-click this, and we're going to say, oh, by the way, we can invert, we can bias these handles, we could change the interpolation on all of these knots individually, by the way, not just all together. If I wanted one of these knots to be maybe have an interpolation of step, they could all be step, but right now if I just select one and I want that one to be not step, I want it to be smooth. Oh, I do have them all selected still, I apologize. Let me just make sure that this guy right here is using the correct, we'll put him at step. So now we have one knot at step and one other knots at smooth. Like that's really cool. Because how many times have you like tried to move those knots like perfectly together? That's
right.
And then they start overlapping each other.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh my God, I can't do this. So, all right, so let me just go ahead and reset all these just by, oh yeah, by the way, you can do all sorts of zooming too. So check this out. You can actually, let me just mouse over. You can zoom into your gradient and like use all the same, I believe, Nick, you use these move tools, don't you? Oh, it's this one? Yeah, what is it, 2 that you
1,
use?
2, 3, 1? Yeah.
Yeah, in 1, I can hold this down and I can pan, and 2, I can like zoom into my gradient.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Look at that. I can zoom into my gradient, I can zoom out, and then the third one, I believe, is just like, so we could zoom here, and I believe this one is, what's the pan? Is it 1?
1, I think.
Yeah, I never use those.
Oh, there you go.
But you can do that, which is really cool.
Instead of everybody's probably made a gradient, and you have to go like full screen at your gradient so you can grab
yeah,
all
I've
the
done that.
knots
Like
right on top of each
it's
other.
crazy. All right, so let's just reset this. Chris, what's a quick way to reset
just
this?
right-click on the gradient and probably say set to
All right,
default.
let's do that. Reset to default. Thank you.
Ta-da!
I love having him around. Let's do this. Let's get
I'm so
back
glad you got to talk about gradients.
I know, man. It's so cool. Let's go in the U, and I'm just going to quickly make this thing look a little bit underlit, which I think is going to be really cool for this title. Let's just do something like that. Hit OK. And then this knot, I'm going to make black. And there is our, actually blue's not working for me because we got gold, so I'm just going to try to find a color that I want. And there is your epic, super fast movie title. And maybe we even animate the animate the horizontal spacing a little bit. Let's just throw a keyframe here, and let's widen it out even more. Maybe like, it's probably not going to play back real time with the VDB.
But then we can show off Alembic.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. So let's do like 120 there. All right, good. And let's make another keyframe. Should I do that? Should we bake it out to Alembic?
See how it's playing to start.
All right. So let's go back. I'm going to hit play. And it's not gonna. It's
not bad. I mean, it's completely rebuilding a brand new mesh every time as it slowly scales outward.
Also, I feel like I didn't go far enough with this. So let's go like 180. And there we go. That's what I want. All right, so now we've got this volume mesh, and it's not playing back real time. And that's sort of a drag. I can't really time it out. I don't really know what to do with that. So we've got this ability now to right-click on it and say create or bake as Alembic. Now I can bake as Alembic and delete, but then I'm going to lose all the work that I just did, and I don't want to do that. So normally I would. I'm destructive to a fault.
Living on the edge, Chad.
Always. So I'm just going to hit bake to Alembic, and we'll just throw it in here, I guess. I guess we'll throw it on the desktop. It should just load it in anyway.
Doesn't everything go on the desktop?
Not normally. So now now it's going to bake that VDB mesh, all that tracking that we just did on the text. Everything is going to be baked into Alembic.
So what is Alembic? Like
So,
I've heard that term,
sure.
and I kind of roughly know it's like baking polygons or something. But what is Alembic, and why is this important?
So
right
Alembic is an open standard for baking out animated meshes, particles. So it's a way to transfer animation and geometry and particles from one application to another.
So it works, it's kind of cross-platform
yeah,
too,
you can
right?
load them into all other 3D applications, most 3D applications, into compositing engines like Nuke and Fusion. You can actually bring these meshes in and continue to manipulate them, or you can hand them off to somebody that maybe isn't in the same application as you. So it makes it, but mostly I think people use it to transfer data back and forth, or if you're like me, you do something and you're sort of done with it, and you probably won't mess with this again maybe, but you want it to play back real time in your viewport. So if you bake it out to an Alembic and you keep the original, now you can work faster. Now you can like start to see your things happen in real time. So I'm just going to kill a little bit more time while our Alembic finishes exporting.
We did crank the resolution up on the mesh.
We have a pretty high resolution on this mesh, but it'll be done shortly, I promise.
I did forget to say at the beginning that if you want these scene files, we'll be saving these scene files, and if you want to see your name in gold, download this and change the name and bake it on your machine. We're going to be giving away the scene files from today and our last presentation yesterday at grayscalegorilla.com/Siggraph. And if you're watching online on your computer, go there now. You could sign up. We're going to be sending the scene files from yesterday and today, and also some news about our latest plugin, Lightkit Pro 3. So make sure you head on over to grayscalegorilla.com/Siggraph, and we'll get you this scene file and some of the other ones from yesterday as well. All right, how we do?
There it is.
We just need the sound effects. Nice.
That's a pretty good sound effect.
Oh, thank you. I've been working on that one.
All right, there you go, Luca. Never forget us.
Thumbs up, man. Thanks for the question. And anybody else? Ooh. Yes, sir. So how much of our modeling workflow will be replaced by VDB? And maybe another way to think of it, too, is like when should we approach modeling from a traditional Polygon way of doing it, and when should we look more at the VDB and volumes? Like how would somebody decide which one to pick?
Well, one quick opening on that is I think we might see some modeling from Nick now, because he can be like, oh, take this mesh and this mesh. Oh, cool, it's done. I don't have to worry about it. If anybody's ever tried to do any kind of modeling, you want to really work with your mesh flow and have everything be really clean, and bools can be really tricky in the way they combine, and if you want to keep it parametric and everything goes real slow. But now it's like, oh, you just turn off your mesher and your builder, and it's like, okay, cool, I can still see the way it's going to look like, and then turn it on at a different point. But in addition to that, there's all sorts of options as far as, I guess it will still work in this scene. I'm just no, we'll open a new one. Just as a quick thing we didn't mention here or yesterday was we can grab the volume builder and we can go ahead and create a field, which we were talking about a little already, but we can actually feed a shader field into a volume builder. Let's go ahead and grab noise and drop that in there, and we have instantly created a bunch of geometry that is based around that noise. And we just had no way to do that before, and there's so many cool things you do. And you already saw when you were talking about the text, all the different cool ways we were able to combine it. We were like taking a bevel out, but now we could say where the text is intersecting this noise, or where the text isn't intersecting the noise. And it's every single noise and everything we could possibly want to add in here. I'm gonna turn on the frame. So refresh, and let's go ahead and just put on some animation speed, and let's go ahead and crank this up to a larger size, and change it to a different noise type. And you see we got all these different noises. I can go ahead and change this to be traveling upward or downward. I always mix those up. Let's go ahead and drop the volume down a little so we get better playback. Hit play. And now we've got a volume of noise, and this could be intersecting text, or this is what's erased out from text, or rust could be slowly growing and actually corroding away. And then you overlay this where a spline is, so now there's only rust on the corners eating away from where the text is. Like, the combinations become absolutely insane.
Yeah.
That's not even something we could have considered before, and now it's trivial to do.
Right. Yeah, I would add that I think that VDB modeling is never going to replace modeling. Modeling is modeling, but it allows you to get creative with it. It allows you to do things that you maybe couldn't have done before with bools and subtractions and adding and stuff. But what I'm really excited about it is if you're trying to model a very complex shape, this allows you to sort of do it in a very free-form way. And then you could always retop the object. You could always retopologize it to get it how you want it to be, to clean quad geo if you need very specific things. But you can prototype very fast this way. You can start to make really complex bottles and whatnot, and then always, if it's not working, retop it. So that's always an option too. But the creative aspect, being able to do stuff like this, is really cool. With MoGraph and everything else tied into it, it's really powerful.
I think and I said this yesterday, this kind of reminds me of MoGraph for modeling.
Yeah,
and
I have a scene with that, actually.
Yeah, and the way that because Cinema 4D for me is always, the power of it is always that most things can stay non-destructive, and you can layer up effectors, and you can layer up all this hierarchy, and then you can always go back and change it, right? You can always go back and change the type, and with traditional polygon modeling, that's not the case. And that's why I've always kind of stayed away from it. It's like, you really have to plan and start and make it right from the start, and if you mess up, you gotta go all the way back in a lot of ways with traditional modeling. With this type of modeling, it's like experimental, and if it doesn't work, you delete that thing that doesn't work. You don't have to start over again. And so that's, to me, what's really exciting about that. And I'll say one more thing is that more and more with all these tools that we have, there's less of a right way to do things and just your way of doing things. And so think of it more that way of like picking the right tool, experimenting with it, rather than deciding between the two. I think they both can make some really great geometry.
Right now we're in like this, we're in the overwhelming mode. Like we haven't gotten to play with everything enough. There's so many amazing new combinations with this. Like fields and the new volume stuff, they're completely unrelated. But they just play together so well that like almost everything that you make with fields, you got this cool thing with cubes animating, and you're like, ooh, but now I'm gonna throw it into a volume, and now they're blending together when they're touching, and then that merges into the floor, and like doing something like dropping a drop of water onto a surface and getting some ripples. Like we can just make that with fields and then blend them all together super easily with volumes. So like to me, it's almost like, in my head there's like two big categories, there used to be two big categories of modeling in cinema, which was like, kind of like a very parametric, like extrudes and loft and lathes and really meticulous like hard body modeling, and then you would make like characters and stuff or cars and throw into a subdivision surface and subdivide that way. But now there's like a third way, which is just like merging and subtracting and adding, and that just opened up so many doors.
So I've seen this final render, Chad, but I was meaning to ask you, like, how did you build this scene? So maybe you could show a little bit of some of the steps here on how you built this this mesh.
Yeah, sure. So this was just through experimentation. I'm going to walk you through the VDB hierarchy right here. So you can see right now I'm just starting out with a very simple sphere that I've brought into my VDB mesh. And then I have a cloner that's hidden right now that's just putting spheres all over that sphere, right? And then so that one, in turn, has even smaller versions of that. And then there is you can't see it here, but what I've done is this one's called inner. So what that allows me to do is I can VDB mesh a sphere, I can put another smaller sphere inside of it, and it's like I've hollowed out that sphere. So now if you, this renders on our Instagram, and you can see that it's actually glass, so you can see through it, and it's not a volumetric glass because I've hollowed out that interior. So then I just created another MoGraph cloner and put some cylinders on it, and those cylinders are subtracting those holes. And then I duplicated that exact same cloner and just put these little cylinders in through it. So these guys are not necessarily driving the holes, but they look like they are because they're in the exact same space. So you're allowed to start mixing and matching, and your whole brain starts to open up about how you can sort of control these things. And if I just come into these, let's grab this one right here. If I just change the seed on that guy, and I give it like a seed of, let's say, 1, all I have to do is go back and do that same seed to all of these, because these are all sort of working off the same mentality. Let's go 1. And now you get a completely unique, different look.
Or you could animate it.
Or you could animate that. I mean, that's like, the possibilities are crazy for doing really cool, abstract weirdness, which is a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Let's see if we have any other questions. Anything about any of the scenes that we've seen? Let me, yeah, good quick question, and then we'll do your question. Can you texture different parts of this mesh separately, or once it's all the same mesh, does it all have to be the same texture?
It will all be one mesh, and I believe it tries to maintain UVs as well. So if I actually come in here and throw a checkerboard, let's say, onto this.
Like, what if you wanted those nubbin things to be a different color?
Oh, I see. Then you would,
know what I mean?
Then you would use fields.
Oh.
Yeah, you could actually use fields to publish data to the Vertex map, and then the Vertex map would be driving the color of the shader. So it's all connected.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, you could just drive fall-offs off of these cylinders for real to generate it into a Vertex map, or the Vertex color tag, even better. You can actually start layering up different you can feed a particular color in instead of just like a black to white gradient. You can feed in, I want some green here, but then where the spheres are, those are going to be blue, and the surface is orange, and those should overlay on each other, and just do all that in a vertex color map.
Right.
And then you can feed vertex color maps anywhere you can feed a vertex tag as far as materials are concerned.
Am I hearing it right where you could use the clones to drive different vertex maps, and then you could change the color based on like where those outside clones are, essentially?
Yes, you could, because all you're doing is then, it's just vertex maps is just zero, just values. It's just driving a shader that maybe is controlling like a color map.
Okay.
And that way you can really, you can get as crazy as you want with it, or as simple as you want with it. It's up to you. But
yeah,
all that's right there for you.
There's some basic demos too that will be a part of this from some of the scene files from yesterday, where I show some clones that adjust the color. It's a little bit different than the volumes, but it's a similar way to think about it. Yeah, let me get this question here. Yes. Yeah, so the question's about your snow walking scene from yesterday, and that might be a good way to maybe show the vertex maps as well, because you showed the, so thanks for the question, first of all. He wants to see that scene, and then this might be a good excuse to not only show what's possible with the fields, but also this vertex idea of like how do you texture the steps differently.
Okay, cool, yeah, that's awesome.
Like what if his shoes are dirty?
Well, he should wipe his feet before he walks on my carpet. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that on. All right, so it's very, very simple. We've just got a simple shader field driving a displacer, pushing those those vertexes down. It's very, very, pretty simple, right? So let's say we wanted to access that data on a shader level. We could come over to the plane, and let's go into point mode. And let me just stop it so it's a little bit easier for us to see. We're going to have to stamp this down so that we can actually manipulate the vertexes. So let's grab some of these vertexes. We're going to go over to select, set vertex weight, make that 0, hit enter. And now, whoa, that's weird. It's like trippy. It's super trippy looking, right? All right, so let's just go into that vertex map. And now you see you have this cool little feature right here, use fields.
Love it.
So now we can actually use fields with vertex maps, which are amazing. So right off the bat, we're given a freeze, and we're going to hit play, and nothing's going to happen. I mean, we are seeing the deformation still happen because that's happening on the displacer. It's not happening on the vertex level. So I hit stop on that. Let's rewind.
Why is that freeze there by default? I've seen that.
That's a good question.
Is there like a good reason to use that right away?
Oh, there definitely is, because what that freeze is doing is it is saving the initial state. So if you had painted a vertex map all over the place and there's like already a fall off on one side or some detail or some text you had drawn on there, that's going to save that state. And you can actually save more than one state with different freezes and like blend between them if you want to merge them on. Like you could have just like painted on the footsteps and just slowly fade them up by passing a linear fall off through it and things like that. We don't have to do that because we can do it dynamically, but it stores a state.
So if you already had vertex maps on there, it's like it doesn't want to delete it. It keeps it for you in case you need it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we've got our vertex field, we're ready to rock. The logical thing to do, well, we need to figure out where his shoes are. We got to put his shoes on here, right? Well, I'm just going to drag my Alembic cache of the shoes right in here and put it right on top of the. Sorry.
You can delete the freeze as well.
Yeah,
because you didn't need the state.
I'm going to use it as a point object, not as a spline object. So you can see we've got our nice little point object icon here, and we could tell it. Do we want to use points? Do we want to surface? Do we want to use volume? Now, if you do points, you can see we're already seeing some of that information. In fact, let me hide the walkers so we can just see the footsteps. Now we just have a ghost, an invisible person walking across.
This is already 10 times better with the ghost footsteps.
I know. So let's go ahead and let's not use points. Let's use surface because it's going to be a little bit easier to control. We're going to give it a little bit more tight of a radius, and let's go ahead and hit play. And now you're going to see. We're seeing the footsteps show up right there, and those vertex maps are live based on his mesh. So they're doing what we want, but they're not fading away like the other ones were, right? They're going with him because they're live.
They're not being like stamped in there
exactly.
like ink or something.
Exactly. In fact, I think if we actually move into points mode, it'll be a little bit faster for our demo. So I'll just keep it in points mode so that we get a little bit better feedback. So we need to make these delay the same way that that we delayed in our shader field, right? I don't like redoing work. Do you?
Never.
No. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to copy my decay and delay from the one that I already know works, which is the snow, and go right into my vertex fields here, and I'm just going to hit paste.
That's a really good example of why these new fields are so powerful, is you could share them between objects. And it used to be that a fall off was kind of tied to your specific effector. And if you wanted the same effect on different effectors, you had to like replicate it. And there was no really good way to share that data. And now that the fields are separate, you could just do exactly what Chad did, which is like, this is already working here. I want it over here. I could just drag them in or copy and paste it like he showed you.
You can even do set drivers, set driven, and they would have a direct live link between each other as well.
That's amazing. So you change one and the other one's changed too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then this, Chris, why don't you take over and use this vertex map in physical to change the color of the shader?
Oh, sure. And even another thing, something that Chad's doing right here, which is fine, especially if you're going to modify it to have it be slightly different on one. But if they're going to have identical settings, he's actually done all of the work and all the processing except for the shader fall off to get the random snow on top. You'd actually just make the vertex tag and then just use that vertex tag. We're not going to do much here, but you can actually then drag this vertex tag in as a source, as a reference here, and now that is now feeding into this system. So we can do all the animation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we could use all the information that he just did on the vertex tag and use it to drag the drive the displacement. And now you'd also only be changing it in one. But even that, this vertex tag is now over.
All right.
That's not doing anything.
We
But
need
then
to
you could-
slow that down a second.
Yeah,
You're
back
saying
that up, Zach.
I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I'm okay. So you took the vertex map that was already being affected that Chad set up, and instead of recreating it, you just said all the data's here. I'll just drag it in.
Exactly. So actually, because it's cool, let's go do one step back. The only thing we're missing was his shader field. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on the shader field, copy that, and we're going to drive the vertex map with that instead. So let's go ahead and right-click there, paste in the shader, and then you had that. I'm just going to crank it up all the way. We don't need the freeze. It's not doing anything, and we're going to have the shoes start fading up a little bit. Now we've got the decay, so it's not going to refresh, but now you can see we've got like the little bit of orange all over the place. So now that noise is driving this as well. So in our displacer, we've kind of got this whole setup, but this is duplicated work now, and you don't like duplicating work. So we delete that. So instead of that being generated as a completely separate thing, we'd be like, we already did the work. It's already in the vertex tag. So let's go ahead and just drag that into here as a source, and now we are displacing.
So wait, you're using
that.
the fields for that I set up in the vertex tag and driving it into the displacer fields? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, that's now become a source in here to click
great.
and drag.
I did not
We're
know.
learning here. We're all learning.
Something on the projection seems a little weird. I probably clicked on something weird, but it's only showing up in that first part. It might be the freeze or it just needs to refresh. But you can see we were getting, at least in this first part, I did something wrong in it, but that is now driving the second part. And what's cool is with that driven in there, you could in the displacer now put an additional, like a delay on top of the vertex tag. So now it's like you get the same information here, but this one could now have a decay. So it's going to remember decay on that vertex on one, but not the other. So the way those layer up is like super insane.
Yeah, that's insanity. I did not know that.
But in any case, I'm going to undo a few times because I'm not sure which order of operations I did to mess up that stretching. So let's go ahead back to them being duplicated. Cool, we're back here. And and just as far as doing a quick material thing, I'm just going to make a new material, double click in there, and we can say vertex map, and we can feed in a vertex tag directly. And now those should be black and white, and let's go ahead and drop that onto our overall object. And now, that should be driving it. And you can actually see the snow is colorizing it as well. But anywhere its footsteps are now, it's going to be lightening it on top of that.
Is a vertex map always like 0 to 1? It's always controlling like one level?
It's a value.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you could just remap it however you want.
And we shouldn't spend any time to get into it, but you can actually right-click and make a vertex color tag, which is similar, except it can be fed colors in addition to everything else. And then we can do overlays and subtracts and red circles on some spots and green noise, and those would combine with color, and that would feed into the exact same material field in the vertex map.
That's crazy.
Shader.
All right. This is why I love doing this. I'm learning right here with everybody. I think we have time for a couple more questions. If we could expand on anything you've seen. If there's like what happens, because I know that's what I do. That looks great, Chris, but what happens if you drop particles on it or spheres? Any other questions I can help answer? Yes. Come on up here. Oh, Absolutely. That's a good question. So the question is, can you put fields into a cloner and do the same thing? The answer is absolutely yes. We've been using it with, I feel like all the demos this week have always been with geometry, because that wasn't really possible before, and that's what we're exploring. But everything you're seeing here about deforming and using fields and moving things also works with clones. So we should do a quick setup, because that was like, it all works the same. But we've been manipulating clones for so long, and now it works with geometry. I feel like we're all excited about that. So maybe we can do a quick clone demo just to show everybody like the old school like clones, and then maybe it'll click a little bit more as well.
Oh, yeah.
You got something specific in mind?
You know, I mean, if it were me, it'd be some spheres in a grid array.
Let's do it.
But you know, maybe that's a way to approach it, is like, okay, so we have clones, we have the traditional fall-offs, and all the things we could do with it. So what can we do now with clones and fields that we couldn't do with fall-offs? Maybe that's a way to approach that question, is like, let's see if we could push clones and the way that they move with these new fall-off or with these new field effectors.
Sure. So we're just going to start out with a field of clones here. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a decent point count here. I'm going to shrink them to be a little bit closer to each other there. There we go. I really love the honeycomb. It's so cool.
I know. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Yeah, the honeycomb array was introduced a few versions ago, and I use it a ton now.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we got that. We've got a cloner, but of course we can jump into effectors. Now you just feed in any effector the way you used to. Now the main ones I tend to think of, especially since I'm still in the process of learning some of the stuff fields can do, is I tend to keep it really simple, like just using a plain effector as a way of starting to explore, and then you can feed it into other things. So we will start out that way. But let's go ahead and do a scale thing, or let's scale up on Y and have them scale up really tall. So that's what this plain effector is just overall applying to everything. Now normally you would have you click on fall off and you'd see a spherical fall off, a rectangular, a box one. So we can still do all of those things. So we can go ahead and create let's just start out with a spherical field. But immediately you're going to see that there's some color in here. We can now drive color with our fall offs. So let's start out by playing around with that just a little bit. So we can click on our new spherical field here, and we can determine exactly what our fall off is. But not only do we have this remapping, where we can change how this fall off is applied overall, down, change it. We can even jump open to a contour, do a quantize. We can snap in some different levels in here, so it's kind of stepping up. And you can see exactly the feedback right here. Let's go ahead and put that back to our regular one, do a full gradient there. But we can also click on the color remap. And right now it's just a straight up color, so we can determine whatever color we want to feed in here. So now it's red. And we can say we want that red to be everywhere. But we can also go to here and say, how about a gradient instead?
Ooh, the gradient.
So now we're feeding in a gradient, which is remapping on top of the rest of it. So we can go ahead and create additional knots and throw in some color. And we're going to get that fall off. What's really cool is you click back on the remapping, and you can see right here visually how it's going to be applied to the rest of the object.
Yeah, I like that they did that.
Yeah. But, of course, this stuff layers up in all sorts of cool, crazy new ways. So we can go ahead and make a duplicate of our spherical field. I'm going to go ahead and hit E. Let's go ahead and scoot this off to the side. And let's, in our plane effector, go ahead and feed this one in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add these on top of each other. And now we've got two of them adding. Now just one of them, we already got this light teal on the outside, so the two of them are adding together. But now we have two separate ones that we can move around, but we can change the second one into whatever color we want on that one. Let's drag this color into the middle, and now those are still adding to each other. We have two different spherical fall-offs, but still with the same plane effector. So we have complete control over the way color is applied to individual clones.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this alone wasn't really possible or easily possible with just one effector before, because you'd have to layer those up. Now the fact that it's in a fields menu allows you to do this. It also allows, if you go back to that fields menu, these little sine wave, I know I'm pointing at them, but can you explain those color and movement?
The curves?
Curve buttons. So
I'm not even sure. I haven't really clicked them. I think
oh my
one just
gosh,
stops
I could
colors.
teach Chris something for once. Oh my gosh, this is new.
Get in here.
I can't believe it. So these buttons right here are really powerful. These control the movement. So in Chris's case, he's adding scale to these objects. If you only want that spherical field to control color, you could just remove the movement. So all of your movement settings, you could just toggle on and off just like a solo. And so if you literally just want to color the clones differently with these fields, you could turn off their movement. Same goes with the color over here. You could turn off the color altogether and just say, okay, now I'm only controlling the positions.
Yeah.
So you can see, you could scale and duplicate these and move them all together as well.
That makes perfect sense.
The other really amazing thing that you can do as well is subtract and Boolean things, which is really powerful, I think. So if we grab let's do a cylinder field, and we're going to set this cylinder field, that's already in there. We're going to set this one to subtract. So now you're seeing we're getting, now you have the ability to Boolean out areas that you do not want affected by those fields. The same way that you're doing Booleans in the VDB modeling, you're now able to do those with these fields, which is really, really powerful.
So imagine you have your object floating above it, your cool Nike shoe or whatever, and wherever the shoe goes, you want it to like subtract everything out. You could put that in as geometry and say wherever this object moves, just like the shoes from Chad's demo, and move the clones in the same way we did with the geometry as well. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I have a very quick question. I think we can answer it in 2 minutes. I've been meaning to ask you this, Chris, because we're running out of time. How do I start with 0 scale clones, and then wherever the fields hit, they scale up from 0?
Oh, well, let's find out. Let's just start this from scratch. So we just had the plane effector. It's scaling up. I'm going to go ahead and actually start out by, actually, what might be cool, I don't know if the invert will work, but let's go ahead and start out by turning on the scale field. If we leave it at 0, nothing's going to change. We can turn on absolute scale, I think, and turn them up to 1, 1, 1. Or is it -1? Let's try -1.
Ooh,
-1,
like
-1, -1. Okay, -1 scales them down to 0. So now they just don't
it's all
exist.
zeroed out.
And now in our effect, we can go to fall off. So let's click on a different one here. Actually, let's do something fun. Let's go ahead and create a different piece of geometry. Let's grab like this tube right here, and we'll feed that in as our shape. And I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to say I want to do the volume of it, and let's hide it. And now we are using that as a shape. So now anywhere that this tube is, it's going to erase everything out. So we could go ahead and increase or decrease our radius to grow them or shrink them.
And then can I do the opposite and say wherever the tube is happening?
Exactly.
I can just do the invert?
Well, yeah, exactly. And here, we haven't even done it. There's so much to dive into. But you click on the modifier layers here, and I can go ahead and say, take whatever all the output is and invert it. So now we get the opposite.
Yay.
So
Right?
I don't want it to
So what was I
affect
doing
color.
wrong? Can you go back into the plane effector, and I think it was that absolute scale. Can you just turn that absolute scale off? See, it works there too. All right, I must have been messing something
-1.
up because I've been trying to do this, and I'm sure I screwed something up. But that's super simple. It just works the way I thought it would. So easy answer. Well, we're running out of time today. If you'd like to ask more questions, we have future seasons of AskGSG. We're always planning. We're on a break right now over the summer. And if you want to watch more AskGSG, where questions like this get answered, and we dive into Cinema 4D and play around with this stuff, make sure you check out Greyscalegorilla. We have 4 seasons now of answering these types of questions over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. Yeah, we did the math. It's like more than 2 days of training. If you watch it all straight through. So bring a Gatorade bottle. So, okay. Thank you so much for coming. And if you want to get some of these scene files from yesterday and today, don't forget to check out grayscalegorilla.com/Siggraph. And we're also have a huge week coming up, not only showing more about R20, but also our new Lightkit Pro 3. So thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you, Chris and Chad.
Maxon.
And thank you, Maxon, for having us out here to talk about this new version. We're super excited. Thanks again.